My name is Claire Emery, and for a long time I believed that love and sacrifice would earn me a place in someone else's world. I thought that if I just gave enough, stayed quiet long enough, and proved myself loyal, eventually I'd be treated like family, not like a guest politely tolerated in someone else's home. That illusion shattered on a Wednesday morning so ordinary it was almost cruel. I had just come back from the market. The rain had slowed to a mist, and the paper bag in my arms was still damp. As I stepped through the door, the scent of damp wood and the distant hum of the dryer in the hallway greeted me, a house alive with subtle noises. I slipped off my shoes and looked up. That's when Helena, my father-in-law's second wife, never mom, appeared at the top of the stairs. Her arms were crossed, her voice calm, almost casual. "I want you out of this house by tomorrow." I blinked. "Sorry." "What?" Her expression didn't change. "Tomorrow. This isn't your home anymore." She turned, descending the stairs slowly, the clack of her heels slicing through the silence. I stood there, the grocery bag still in my hand, water droplets sliding off my coat. "Out of here," I repeated like I'd misheard something obvious. "Yes," she said, stopping a few feet away. "Liam and Ava are moving back in. They're expecting. This house needs space for a real family now. A real family." As if I hadn't spent the last 8 years trying to be part of theirs. "You used to serve a purpose," she added, "but that time's over." I felt the words hit me one by one like ice cubes drop down my back. My fingers loosened. The bag slipped to the floor. An egg cracked inside yolk and whites oozing slowly across the hardwood like the years I'd poured into this life, now spreading into a mess no one would bother to clean. I whispered more to myself than to her. What about Ethan? Ethan, my husband, her stepson, the man who once told me, "As long as we're together, you have a home." Helena smiled without warmth. "He knows." He didn't argue. Didn't argue. In fact, she added, "He said you've outlived your usefulness." Her words were exact. Her tone was dry, unflinching. What's the point of keeping a woman who can't give him a child? My mouth went dry. My chest tightened. Not from the insult I'd grown used to Helena's dismissive tone, but from the sudden collapse of everything I'd tried to protect. 3 years ago, I'd undergone an emergency surgery after a ruptured cyst. The procedure saved my life, but cost me the chance of ever having children. I remembered sitting on the bathroom floor that night, the silence heavier than pain, Ethan holding my hands, whispering, "We'll be okay. You're enough. I married you, not your womb." Now even that promise had quietly expired. Helena brushed past me and headed into the kitchen. I stood there, shoes off the rain, still fresh on my coat, egg yolk spreading on the floor. It was all so absurdly mundane. The soft flicker of the hallway lamp, the gentle creak of floorboards, the faint smell of detergent. I waited for Ethan to come home that evening. He didn't. Not a message, not a missed call, not even a lie to soothe me. I sat in the kitchen, the groceries untouched, the air still smelling faintly of cilantro and oranges. The granite countertops gleamed. I had chosen them. The green backsplash, the polished sink, the bar stools with the steel legs, all mine. Every single thing in this house that looked new, functional, warm, I had paid for it. And yet somehow I was the disposable one. I looked around the room like I was seeing it for the first time. The woven placemats. The dimmable pendant lights I saved 2 months to buy. The Dutch oven I ordered from a Black Friday sale. These weren't just items. They were pieces of a life I had spent years curating, always believing I was building something shared, something real. But the silence was louder now. So loud I could hear the fracture forming in the center of me. I didn't cry that night. I lay on the bed, the one I chose during a New Year's sale, staring at the ceiling. The shadows of the ceiling fan blades spun slowly. I hadn't turned it on. It was the reflection of the nightlight. I remembered Ethan leading me into this house for the first time. "Just be patient with Helena," he said. "She'll come around." I was patient. I cooked. I cleaned. I made space. I tried. I gave up my promotion to take freelance work, thinking maybe if I was around more, things would change. I volunteered for Liam's wedding, hosted Ava's bridal shower. I knit Helena a cardigan one winter, wrapped it in blue tissue and a ribbon. A week later, I found it in the garage, still in the bag, moth-bitten. But I kept trying, because somewhere along the way I started measuring my worth by how much rejection I could absorb without breaking. Now here I was, 41 years old, a woman who'd built her life inside a house she didn't own with people who never let her belong. Even after 8 years, Helena had only ever called me Ethan's wife, never Claire, never daughter-in-law, never family. That night I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My eyes were rimmed red, not from crying I hadn't cried, but from something deeper, something harder. A thought crept in, quiet, dangerous. How long have I been living like a stranger in my own life? The apartment I moved into wasn't much. 4th floor, no elevator. The heating worked when it felt like it. The windows rattled when buses passed by too quickly. The walls were thin. I could hear the neighbor's daughter practicing piano every night at 7, followed by her father's nightly coughing fits. And yet, for all its imperfections, it was the first space in years where I could breathe. It took 2 days to move out. 2 days, 1 cab, and 6 boxes. Helena didn't say goodbye. Ethan didn't show up. There was no fight, no screaming match, no tearful confrontation, just an overwhelming silence that made me wonder if I'd ever really been part of that house at all. One moment I was folding up the cardigan Helena never wore. The next I was handing my keys to the housekeeper like I was leaving a hotel after a long, disappointing stay. I stood on the curb as the cab pulled up. My boxes were already stacked beside me. One of them had a dent in the corner, the one with the photo albums. I didn't pack any framed photos. The frames were his. I only took the prints. The driver asked. All this I nodded. That's my whole life. He smiled politely, not realizing I meant it. The first night in the apartment I couldn't sleep. Not because it was uncomfortable, it was too quiet, too empty. There were no footsteps above, no dry remarks over dinner, no echo of Helena's perfume trailing down the hall, no Ethan. I sat on the floor back against the bare wall, knees hugged to my chest. The streetlight outside flickered every few seconds. I kept thinking it was a sign of what I didn't know. Maybe that I'd finally made a decision. Or maybe that I hadn't really made one at all, I'd just been pushed out. I stared at my phone. Still no message. Still no apology. No explanation. No I miss you. Nothing. I opened the Notes app and typed, "You left me before you ever told me you wanted to go." Then deleted it. What was the point? The days passed like water through open fingers. I unpacked slowly, bought a secondhand sofa, found a mismatched coffee table at a thrift store, hung up sheer curtains not to block the world out but to filter it gently. Every little choice I made felt strange, foreign, like I was waiting for someone else to walk in and veto my decisions. But no one came. One morning I stood in front of the mirror brushing my hair and caught myself holding my breath. I didn't even know why, just a habit I guess, waiting for tension, waiting for criticism. But all I saw was my reflection, my own eyes, my own hand, my own breath shaky, but mine. I whispered to the woman in the mirror, "We're still here." It wasn't poetic, it wasn't powerful, but it was something. 2 weeks later I ran into Leah, an old friend from college, at a bookstore near the apartment. She was holding a coffee and a stack of cookbooks. "Claire," she said, tilting her head, "I haven't seen you in..." Wow. We exchanged the usual, "How are you? What are you doing in this part of the city? You look well." Then she asked the question everyone eventually does, "And how's Ethan?" There it was, the sharp sting under the skin. I paused, then exhaled. Gone. Her eyes widened. "Oh, I'm sorry. Are you figuring it out?" I said before she could finish. She hesitated, then did something unexpected. She reached over and hugged me. Not one of those quick, awkward hugs, but the kind where someone holds on just long enough for you to believe they mean it. She pulled back. "Let me buy you a coffee. You look like you haven't had a real conversation in weeks." She was right, and I said yes. That coffee turned into 2 hours of talking. We didn't even get through half our drinks. We just talked. About anything. About books. About our college years. About how we both thought we'd have kids by now. About the way life doesn't follow the plans you made when you were 20. At one point, Leah leaned forward and said, "You always used to draw." "Do you still?" I laughed. "No. Haven't picked up a pencil in years. You should," she said simply, like it was obvious. Like it was allowed. That night I went home and dug through one of the unopened boxes. At the very bottom was a sketch pad, still blank. I opened to the first page, stared at it for a while, then drew a house. Not the old one, not even a real one, just an outline. 4 walls, a roof, no doors. But it was a start. A few nights later I got a message from Ethan. "Hope you're okay." That was it. "No, I'm sorry. No, I miss you." Just a 6-word courtesy ping, like he was checking in on a package that had been delivered somewhere else. I stared at the screen, then locked the phone. He hoped I was okay. For the first time I realized I didn't care what he hoped. Weeks turned into months. There was no grand awakening, no cinematic montage of reinvention, just a quiet, steady unfolding of life. Each morning I got up, made coffee, watered the dying plant I named Hope, ironically, or maybe not, and tried to remember that this calm, this stillness was mine. It surprised me how easily the world kept turning without Ethan. At first I thought that was the tragedy, that someone you gave years to could vanish and the earth didn't pause. But then I realized it was a gift. Life didn't stop for him, which meant it didn't have to stop for me. Helena never reached out either. Not even a birthday message. Not a forwarded meme. Nothing. She disappeared the way smoke fades without apology or trace. I used to grieve her absence like a death. But now I let the silence be a kind of peace. Because if someone can forget you that quickly, maybe they were only borrowing space in your life, not truly building something inside it. I started drawing again. Not constantly, not for hours, just sketches, bits of moments. A woman in a cafe with tired eyes and chipped nails. A stray cat on a fence. A hand holding a coffee cup too tightly. Each drawing felt like reclaiming a version of me I thought was gone. It was Leah who finally asked the question I hadn't dared voice. You ever think about starting over? Like really starting? We were walking along the park. The air was cool. Leaves were tumbling lazily from the trees. I smiled. You mean move? Change my name? Grow a beard? She laughed. No, I mean something brave, something selfish in a good way. The words stayed with me. Something selfish in a good way. That night I made a list. Rent a studio space. Submit a drawing to that local zine. Say yes to that dinner with Leah's weird but charming coworker. Throw out the last of Ethan's emails. Buy better curtains. Learn how to make something spicy without crying. It wasn't a bucket list, it wasn't a revenge plan. It was a map, a way forward. Even if it only led to more ordinary days, they would be mine. 3 months after I moved, I walked past a little gallery with a sign that read, "Call for Artists' New Voices Exhibit." I stood in front of the window for 10 minutes, then walked in. The woman at the desk had pink glasses and a kind smile. She handed me a form and said, "We're looking for something honest." I went home and stared at my sketch pad for hours. Finally, I tore out a page. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even that good. But it was mine. A drawing of a woman standing in an empty apartment surrounded by moving boxes, smiling. Barely. But still. I titled it, "Still Here." A week later, they emailed me. "We'd love to include your piece in the show. Thank you for trusting us with it." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I cried. Not because I missed him, not because I was lonely, but because I finally felt seen, not as someone's partner, not as someone's disappointment, just as me. Sometimes freedom doesn't look like fireworks or screaming into the ocean. Sometimes it looks like waking up alone on a rainy Wednesday and realizing you don't care if they ever call again. You are still here, and that is enough. The gallery opening was quiet. Not empty, just unpretentious. A few people wandered through with wine in plastic cups, murmuring things like raw or textural or brave, the way art people do when they don't know what to say, but want to seem like they do. My sketch, Still Here, was placed in a small corner near the window. Not the center of the show, not a spotlight piece. But it was there. Framed, named, alive. I hovered nearby, pretending not to hover. Then she walked in. Red jacket. Short hair with silver streaks that looked chosen, not accidental. She walked like she was late for nothing. Her eyes scanned the room quickly, not searching, just absorbing. She stopped at my piece, didn't say anything, just looked, for longer than anyone else had. Then she turned and caught my gaze. "Yours?" I nodded. "It's quiet," she said, "but loud in the places that matter." I didn't know what that meant, but I felt like I did. "Thank you," I said. She held out her hand. "Grace. Hi, I know," she interrupted, tapping the name card under the frame. "Your name's right there." We both laughed. It wasn't flirty, it wasn't awkward, it just was. We ended up at a diner afterward, a real one. Chrome edges, waitresses with tired voices, pie that tasted like it had a story. She ordered black coffee and lemon meringue. I got fries and a soda because I was too wired to be hungry and too polite not to order. Grace talked like someone who'd lived 3 lives already. She used to be an art therapist but left after her 3rd burnout. She'd loved hard men, women, both none, and didn't care who knew. She lived alone, chose silence often, but said she never got lonely, just bored of her own thoughts. When I asked why she came to the exhibit, she just shrugged. I like watching people put their ghosts on walls. And when she asked why I submitted, I told her the truth. I think I needed proof that I wasn't invisible. Grace nodded. "You're not. But it's okay if you are sometimes. Disappearing isn't always losing. Sometimes it's just retreat. Before we left, she gave me a card. Not a business card, just her name and a number written in pen. On the back, in messy handwriting, she'd scrawled, "We don't owe the past a damn thing." That night I didn't sleep. I wasn't anxious, just awake, the good kind, the kind that makes you want to write something, or pack a bag, or forgive yourself. Grace was right. We don't owe the past a damn thing. For days I didn't call Grace. Not because I didn't want to, I did, often, obsessively. But something about her energy made me feel like rushing would break the spell, like she was a rare bird that only landed when the world was quiet enough. So I waited. In the meantime, I painted. Not for a show, not for anyone, just painted. I taped cheap paper to the kitchen wall. Acrylics, charcoal, even ketchup one night when I ran out of red. The work was messy and unfiltered and finally mine. And the strange thing was, the more I painted, the less I cared what it meant. It wasn't about healing, or statements, or rebellion. It was just about making. And every brushstroke felt like cracking a window in a room I'd sealed shut years ago. One rainy Thursday, I texted Grace, "Do you still watch Ghosts on Walls?" A few seconds passed. Then a reply, "Only when they blink back." We met at a bookstore that also sold tea. No small talk this time. She opened with, "How's the invisibility thing going?" I grinned. Still inconsistent. She nodded. "Good. Means you're real." We browsed. I picked up a copy of The Body Keeps the Score. She rolled her eyes and handed me The Art of Noticing instead. "Try curiosity before trauma," she said. "It's a softer place to start." We sat by the window. Rain on glass. Jazz playing too quietly to identify. I told her about the paintings, about the ketchup, about the one I accidentally tore and didn't even care. She looked at me like she was seeing something settle in place, not fixed, not finished, just no longer floating. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a Polaroid. It was of her much younger, standing in front of a mural, alone. She handed it to me without explanation. "I used to be angry all the time," she said. "Now I'm just a little less loud inside." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Sometimes silence is the only answer that respects the weight of a sentence. That night I started a new piece. No plan, no sketch, just the memory of her voice, the rain, the hum between two people who are still learning how to be seen by others, and maybe more importantly by themselves. Spring arrived slowly. Not the cinematic kind with petals swirling and sunshine pouring through linen curtains. No, this spring was tentative, like a nervous guest at a party unsure if they were really invited. But it was enough. Enough for me to walk more, to leave the house without rehearsing it first, to notice that the city hadn't stopped breathing just because I had. One evening Grace texted, "Come see the wall." No context, no address, just that. I knew exactly what she meant. The mural was almost done. She stood in front of it, hands stained with spray paint, hair tied up, paint flecks dotting her jeans. It was taller than I imagined. A whole building face turned into something alive. Lines swooped like wind and hair and language all at once. Colors bled and bloomed. There were faces, not portraits, but impressions. Eyes that seemed mid-blink mouths parting into thought. In the corner, small and half-hidden, was my sketch. Or rather, our sketch. That messy moment we made in the cafe, now part of this living, breathing wall. I looked at her. "You put it here." She nodded. It belonged here. Something rose in my chest, warm and tight, like I'd swallowed the sun by accident. We sat on the curb, the kind of tired that comes only after creating. People walked by and looked. Some took photos. Some ignored it entirely. "I used to think if I didn't make something important, I'd disappear," I said quietly. Grace replied without looking at me. "And now I think maybe showing up is enough." She smiled. "That's the art." Later, when the light began to shift, that golden slant that makes everything look holy, she pulled out her phone. "Say something honest," she said. I blinked. Now, she was already recording. So I looked at the wall, then at her. And I said, "I'm starting to believe I deserve to exist outside of other people's stories." She didn't stop the recording. She just nodded, turned the camera on herself, and whispered, "Me too." Weeks later, I printed the photo. The one Grace took me caught mid-sentence in front of the mural, the colors behind me loud and chaotic, my face quiet, alive. I pinned it above my desk, not for vanity, not to remember her, but to remind myself I was there. I made it through the dark, I found my way back to breath and bone sketch and sound. I started drawing again. Not for clients, not for approval. For myself. Sketches of windows at dawn, hands in motion, strangers on subways, messy fast alive. Sometimes Grace sends photos from her travels. Sometimes I answer. But mostly I just live. One night I walk past the mural. Someone's added new layers. A bird, a burst of yellow, a name in a language I don't speak. And I don't mind. It's not mine anymore. It never really was. Just like healing, it doesn't stay where you leave it. It grows, changes, bleeds forward into others. I smile, then I walk on. Not toward anything in particular, just forward.